Now, there's always a quote that floats around in my brain. You have enemies, good. It means you stood up for something at some time in your life. It's usually falsely attributed to Winston Churchill, but it's actually from French playwright Victor Hugo. Someone who has resolutely stood up for something is Green Party leader Zach Polanski, who from day one has stood up for the people of Gaza as Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu enacted a genocide against the enclave. And if there's one thing that will make you public enemy number one, it's opposing the Zionist lobby and their apparatchiks. Although in this case, it's not even the lobby itself, but an actual serving Israeli minister who's gunning for the Green leader. The Telegraph are reporting that the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Sharon Haskell has declared the Green Party as hateful and racist for debating a motion at conference that reifies the party's support for the Palestinian cause. But Zach is having none of it and has rightly pushed back, pointing out that nothing should distract from the UK and US-backed genocide. Enter former Tory MP Michael Gove, someone who claims to have a romantic attachment to Israel, that was in his interview with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell, who jumped in to defend his emotional support ethno-state. It is not a genocide. Rwanda was a genocide. The Shoah was a genocide. Equating Israel with the Interahamwe or the SS is just wicked. Now, it's worth pointing out, genocide is about intent, not scale. Second of all, numerous human rights organisations and genocide scholars, plus the United Nations, all agree that it's genocide, as Zach points out here. Amnesty International, Médecins Sans Frontières, Save the Children, the UN, International Association of Genocide Scholars, B'Tselem, Physicians for Human Rights Israel, Palestinian Human Rights Organizations Council, Islamic Relief, they all say that it's a genocide. Clearly, with Gove's honour no longer intact, he needed some backup from his ex-wife, journalist Sarah Vine, although rather than argue against Zach's position, she instead went for something, well, a little less tactful, shall we say. I've always wondered to myself how Hitler managed to persuade the German people to turn against the Jews. If you tell enough lies and spread enough poison, eventually people will start believing them. Hateful, divisive little man. Yes, you heard that right. She's comparing the most prominent Jewish party leader in Britain to Adolf Hitler. This is especially galling for Vine, as she's currently a columnist for the Daily Mail, a paper that literally backed Hitler and the Nazis in the 1930s. And the pylon hasn't stopped there. We covered earlier this week about how the Green Party's accessible campaign videos for those who don't have English as a first language have come under attack. But this particular response from Telegraph journalist / opinion spewer Alistair Heath has gone from criticism to catastrophizing. Just listen to this headline. The Green Party's evil campaign is a glimpse of how Britain's democracy dies. Heath's Polanski derangement syndrome is on full display in this one. Here are some choice excerpts. We should start by calling out the Greens for what they have become, a hateful, despicable extremist party that has identified an entrepreneurial opportunity in weaponizing tribalism, division, stagnant living standards, misinformation and envy. Their behaviour in Gorton and Denton has become abominable. Following a playbook pioneered by far-left parties worldwide, the Greens, now led by Zach Polanski, are targeting a red-green coalition of white, woke progressives and the reactionary subset of the Muslim electorate. These two groups may appear culturally incompatible, but they can be united not just by their support for socialism, but also by their often virulent Israelophobia, an atavistic prejudice that the Greens unashamedly pander to. Israelophobia is not a thing. That's not a thing, Alistair. And it's just very funny to me to go, well, it's only a certain subject of radicalised Muslims who care about genocide and think that illegal occupation is bad. I don't know how to break this to you, Alistair, but Israel's illegal behaviour in the West Bank and in Gaza has been called out continually by the United Nations. This isn't a minority position amongst the international community. It is not solely a position held by woke white progressives and sectarian Islamists. Now, the article does go on. They have reinvented themselves as a vehicle for a new left that combines Marxism-Leninism, third worldism, critical theory, and other radical anti-Western and anti-bourgeois philosophies. They detest private property and family values. I don't know when Zach Polanski was Vladimir Lenin. I don't know when the Green Party for England and Wales, the nice little social democratic party, suddenly became the Marxist-Leninist vanguard or wanted the total abolition of private property. I mean, I should be so lucky. Now, whilst a lot of the attacks against Polanski have been silly or ludicrous, some of them have been incredibly insidious. Telegraph columnist and former Jewish Chronicle editor Jake Wallace-Simons has been a regular critic of Polanski and has a reputation, shall we say, in my opinion, for specifically impugning him over his Jewish ethnicity. But this latest attack has to rank as one of his worst. Someone asked me what I thought of Zach Polanski, a Jew who has set himself against his own people. My response: the blood libel, which has caused untold suffering down the ages, originated in Norwich in 1144 with a man called Theobald of Cambridge, a Jew who had converted to Christianity. That is what I think of Zach Polanski. I don't know how it's possible for me to express how depraved it is to specifically tar a still practicing Jewish man with being somehow analogous to the original perpetrator of the blood libel conspiracy theory. Specifically, and only specifically, as far as I can see, due to disagreement about policy with regards to the state of Israel and Zionism. I genuinely don't know how to possibly articulate how disgusting this makes me feel, because what it's doing is creating the dual loyalty trope in reverse. Like, British Jews are citizens of this country, implying that somehow they need to have some kind of allegiance to a foreign state is literally the dual loyalty trope that anti-Semites weaponize against Jewish people. He's an incredibly prominent Jewish man in this country, and he's done huge amounts to try and create, as far as I can see, in my opinion, a Green Party that is welcoming for people of all backgrounds. We've seen, we have a gay Jewish man and a Muslim deputy leader hugging and being able to campaign together and share the party together. So this kind of weaponizing, as if somehow Zach is being a virulent anti-Semite, it really kind of shakes me to see this kind of language. How do you feel about this, Stephen?
I think the language is really, really shocking. I think it's, like the Sarah Vine post. You take a Jewish man and you make an explicit comparison between him and a person who carried out the Holocaust. I mean, that is just, it's beyond shocking. And what's really shocking is that post, as far as I know, is still up. I think I would just, if I tweeted something like that, I don't think I'd be able to get out of bed for days. I'd delete it immediately, of course. I would have had to have been like, I don't know, drugged with something in order to do it. But then, I just would, not be able to show my face for a long time. But but there are people who are a lot more brazen than me. Just on the general politics of what's happening here, though, as well, like that quote from Wallace Simpson. There's a claim that's so often made against the Greens in this by-election is that they're practicing sectarianism, that they're creating division, or that they're trying to sort of work, as it were, grab a vote which belongs to people of a certain demographic. In this case, Muslims in Greater Manchester, but of course, what they're promoting here is a different kind of sectarianism, and they're criticising Polanski for doing a sectarianism that they regard as wrong, as treachery, when he should be doing another sectarianism, the sectarianism of supporting Israel, the sectarianism of never criticizing the country, the sectarianism of treating Muslims as your enemies. That's the kind of sectarianism they would like to see in practice, and it's the kind of sectarianism that these people seem to be very happy to practice, and that Reform is very happy to see people practicing. So when this word gets thrown around against the Green Party in this by-election, sectarianism, it's really a word that they're using because they don't want to display the racism that actually underlies it. And there is an acceptable form of racism in this country, which is the form that is being used here by Wallace Simpson and various other people, to explicitly say Muslims are dangerous, Muslims are, anti our values, Muslims are, non-progressive in various ways, to just sort of homogenize, group people together in a block. And of course, it's so motivated by this sense that at all costs, Israel must be defended from criticism. It's so motivated by the fact that they can't stand the fact that in this country, a huge number of people, a wide range of people from lots of different backgrounds, are protesting Israel on the regular and have been doing it for 2 years now because of a genocide. They don't like the word genocide, of course, because that, again, it's the correct word to use, but it has a very strong critical component in it for Israel's government, but also Israel as a state, and what a state of Israel's kind is capable of doing in order to sustain its own very contested existence in the region. So all of that language is Yeah, completely shocking. The only thing I enjoyed in that whole story is that article from Alistair Heath, because I love it when some editor at the Telegraph gives a writer the crack cocaine of the country club brigade, and they just get to sprinkle it all over the page. Marxist, Leninist, anti-property, and you just see Telegraph readers all over the country just like snorting it up and going mad. It's like such a recipe for selling papers. It always impresses me the number of words, these trigger words that they can string together. It's like quite creative, almost kind of some sort of slam poetry or something.
I mean, it was really quite wild. I highly recommend everybody at home going and reading the Alistair Heath article for yourself. Like, it reads like a whole ass fever dream, I swear. It's genuinely worth your time, if not just to laugh at anyway. But I think it does speak to just how much, especially British conservatives, do feel like their ideology is the correct one. I don't think you've seen this meme going around, which is the people, like right wing, is saying that discourse with leftists is impossible because they'll pretend not to get the point. I'm just like, well, they have these underlying beliefs that they feel are unshakable. They feel are universal truths, but just aren't the case. I mean, Alistair Heath in his article specifically says that the Green Party are subscribing to like disproven, all the intellectually bankrupt things of the left, or things that have been intellectually panned. And I'm like, no, these ideologies are not like this. Again, these are all contestable. There's no one true ideology, but conservatives, especially those who believe, and I guess in kind of unipolar imperialist politics, which you basically have to do so at this point, at least to support Israel in its current form, right? Maybe you can make a case that there are some two-state solution type people who don't necessarily like explicitly support imperialist values, even if they do so implicitly, but they're so tied to this kind of primacy of the nation state and the idea that, well, these people, regardless of the international law, regardless of the occupation, regardless of whatever happens in terms of utility to the Palestinians more broadly, the idea that that should have any weight against the necessity of the existence of the state of Israel. We saw this in Ian Dale's debate with Zach Polanski on LBC last week, where he was like, well, I believe these states have a right to exist. I'm like, well, actually, no state has a right to exist. Yeah. They are emergent properties of the agreements between people. And because they can't undo that specific belief in the primacy of the nation state, they will defend Israel to the hilt. And I would also say something, it's like, Zionism is sectarianism. Like Hindutva, sectarianism. These are explicitly ethnically motivated. Opposing those things, that's not sectarianism. Opposing these ideologies on ideological grounds, that's just political debate. Like, Muslims aren't necessarily, in what they're implying here, disagreeing with Narendra Modi or disagreeing with Benjamin Netanyahu because they hate Hindus or they hate Jews, but it's because there is an ideology that they disagree with, which is the ethnic supremacy that has led to pogroms in Gujarat and has led to a genocide in Gaza. And it's a very emotive subject. And all the people who've been continually trying to paint Muslims, as a monolithic voting bloc that shouldn't have their own kind of politics that should be taken account of politically, but also on top of this, the idea that any opposition they have to any kind of ethnic movement overseas is only framed by their opposition to the ethnicity rather than the supremacist nature of the ideologies of the things like Zionism.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. Can I just bring up another thing in that Heath piece, just briefly, which is where he says that the Greens have weaponized stagnating living standards. That you can't weaponize stagnating living standards, in order to like collect a group of people together. Stagnating living standards are already weaponized by being stagnated living standards. It means that people are miserable, that no one's offering them solutions. And the idea that, when you point that out to people, you're weaponizing something or you're doing some kind of sectarianism, just pointing out economic facts and saying that there's something that you'd like to do about them, and you're using the economic conditions of people's lives to bring them together. That's not sectarianism either. That's just like politics. Good politics. That's just politics.
Yeah, it's like Labour saying to the Times, like, they're hammering us on Gaza. They're doing a cynical campaign. I'm like, they're just telling people policies that appeal to them and trying to get them to vote for those policies. Like, that's just how political campaigning works.